Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today, I've got David Pullan and I've got Sarah Jane McKechnie. And we're going to be talking about their book, The DNA of Engagement. There you go. Look at that. And it's been put forward for Business Book of the Year prize or something like that. Yeah. The story-based approach to building trust and influencing change. Thank you so much for coming on. And
huge pleasure. Thank you, Tim, for inviting us.
So where can people find you?
Well, here at the moment, in our back garden, but in LinkedIn is the best place, isn't it? Really, it's Sarah Jane. It's sort of, we have a story. The Story Spotters is our company name. We're at www.thestoryspotters.com, and Sarah Jane McKechnie and David Pullan on LinkedIn, and there's a Story Spotters page. But as we all know,
and
LinkedIn
and
a website, yeah, which I just said. But as we all know, LinkedIn is a personal thing nowadays, so nobody looks at company pages anyway. So find us individually on LinkedIn.
So tell us, what was the inspiration behind the book?
Well, we were doing some work with Aviva, the insurance firm in the UK, and it was basically about getting their kind of middle management up into gear, really,
for a change program
to support the change that was going on. And we had been working with a model that's from Randy Olson, who's American. He's got this model called the ABT, which stands for and, but, therefore, which is basically a story model. And he got that from working with the guys who did South Park. In order to keep the story going, something had to happen all the time. So there was something would happen, like somebody was walking along the road, which is the and bit, the normal thing. But then he tripped. So therefore, he had to go to hospital or whatever. And this is basically the people at South Park said, what you have to do is you have to make sure that there's an ABT every kind of half a minute or whatever, otherwise people get bored.
Yeah.
So this really fascinated us in terms of the fact that when we started to think about it, and it's kind of our lives are a story. This is how you create story, but therefore something happens as you dream of something goes wrong, and so something then has to change.
Actually, it was one night we were sitting at home, and Randy always used to say that the ABT is the DNA of story, and Sarah Jane said, actually, it's the DNA of life. We all have dreams. And then something gets in the way of it and something has to happen. And I went, DNA, dream, nightmare, action. We dream of something, a nightmare gets in the way, actions have to take place. And it's really, when you think about it, that's how it's how we understand, plan and problem solve every moment of our lives. In a change program, there is a dream of what can happen. There are the nightmares that will get in the way, and therefore the actions that have to be taken to overcome the nightmares and achieve the dream. So we sort of developed it as a strategic and a communication model, not just a messaging model.
So the DNA. So take us through the DNA part of that.
Yeah, well, that does, as Sarah Jane said, I mean, that does stand for dream, nightmare, action. And it is very much, I mean, we're living it every moment. From the moment we wake up in the morning. I mean, even on something like this, the dream is we're going to get onto a live broadcast with Tim, and it's going to be absolutely lovely and everything will be fine. The nightmare is Chrome needs updating. And so the action is you scramble around trying to get it done by 4 o'clock UK time so that you can actually go live. And if you think about it, that's all of us. I mean, everyone listening to this now, we live that on a micro level from the moment we wake up and, just sort out getting the kids out to school to actually the biggest macro levels of trying to change the direction of companies, trying to change the direction of countries even. So we took that as the model about how you can use it strategically, but more importantly, how you can use it as a communication model as well to really pull people into a way of thinking rather than trying to push ideas. And it's this pull versus push thing, which is a big problem we think in change.
It's also the basis of story. So and the thing is, our lives are a story. We live in story all the time. Every day is a story from beginning to end. we wanted to do this, then this happened, then we had to change our minds or whatever. There's a whole litany of things that go on.
And we're the star of our own story.
We are, yes. And so it's silly really not to understand that we need it's the most easiest way to get through in terms of the way that you communicate is to use a model that we live constantly every second of our lives. And that's really the way in which we've developed what we've done, because it makes sense.
It's funny, isn't it? It's 7 and a bit billion of us on the planet living 7 and a bit billion different stories, with us all being the individual star.
Yeah.
And why do you think? Why is storytelling so powerful? Because I've had probably 4 people on this podcast talking about storytelling, all in different, having different angles on it. Why do you think storytelling is so important, especially in this age?
I think Sarah Jane just said it perfectly. It's because whether we like it or not, it exists. Stories exist. It's how we understand our lives through what we would call our own story world. It is how we actually sort of place ourselves in the world, which is in a story of what our goals, our ambitions, our dreams are, the things that get in the way of them, the nightmares and the actions we have to take. So as human beings, it's how we're programmed really to understand things. I mean, even if we just hear a bunch of facts, which is a big danger in business, is we tend to talk in facts. And then you realize suddenly, when you realize that people are taking those facts in and rearranging them into a pattern that suits, that they can understand from their perspective, i.e. their own story, you suddenly realize, oh, okay, so I've got to start creating, let's call it the narrative rather than the story. There needs to be a strong narrative there. And it's just a fact of life. It runs right through us every second of the day.
I mean, it changes the way that we live, really. I was just thinking, if a little kid, they go into a field and then they get really frightened by a horse because the horse starts running at them. The horse may not particularly want to hurt the little kid, but the little kid is traumatized then forever and runs away. And so that's a story that then goes through the psyche constantly. And
they stick, don't they?
They do. And as we, as we grow up, these sorts of things stick with us and they form us. So,
in fact, it's one of the biggest problems with change, isn't it? Is that people we get stuck on our own stories, and to actually change people's story and actually to get them to think of things in a different way is probably one of the biggest. Yes, massively.
Can be quite frightening.
But it's one of the biggest jobs of leadership is to be able to get people to understand the story differently.
So talk us through the DNA framework, how each strand contributes to building trust and lasting change.
Can I kick off with that?
Dream.
Yeah. No, I mean, what we have to remember is what we did with this as a framework is realizing that it is so baked into us as a mechanism for surviving. In fact, arguably, it's the reason why we have risen up the food chain as a species and become so important, is because we're very good at understanding goals and problems and actions that need to be taken. So what we did with that in terms of a communication model is we sort of said, okay, let's work with that. When you are building a new relationship, or you're starting to build rapport, or dealing with somebody skeptical, the danger is that what we tend to do is we go in, we got this problem and we need to do this to overcome it. And people go, whoa, hang on a second. Is it really that big a problem? Is indeed that the problem? And if it is a problem, it's not my problem, it's that person's problem. So, you end up by pushing problems on and then coming to solutions, you get into this sort of basic physics thing of that, you push something on and there's an opposite reaction to it. And you end up with a real problem is nothing gets done. So what we discovered is, especially, as I say, in those early stages of trying to build relationship, you connect to somebody's dream first and you say, listen, I get what it is you're trying to achieve here, or I get what it is we've all agreed what we're trying to achieve here. But nightmare, this is what could get in the way of achieving that. So let's work together to think how we can overcome that and achieve that dream. So you pull people in by actually, the phrase we use is connection before correction. And I think it's it's a massive problem, especially early days in any relationship or any change program where people try and push things on And as Sarah Jane said, you're basically trying to say, no, your story's wrong. We're going to do a different story. Ain't going to happen. You've got to bring them in, take them on the journey of changing the story.
And I think that connection is so. It is with friendships, isn't it? It is when we're trying to persuade our toddler to do something. It's you have to be able to go where they are and understand where they are and genuinely connect with where somebody is before you can even begin to talk about what might be getting in the way of it. But it's human nature. It's how we receive information from someone that we trust, because trust is built, isn't it, on that human connection which is shared.
It's funny you say that about the toddler thing. There's a very good friend of ours who's head of IT of a big European bank, and he said, I'm still basically dealing with the 5-year-old that I've got at home. They sort of say, please, sir, I can't find where my pencils are. And so it's actually, it doesn't change. Although we're all grown up and we might be wearing business attire, as they say, we're still sort of dealing with the same primal instincts in human beings of,
we all have emotions.
We all have emotions, and the trust. It's basically, I mean, the subtitle, as you said, Tim, is a story-based approach to building trust and influencing change. And the trust is built by letting people know that they've been understood. That's a big thing that we talk about. And we tend to trust the things that we understand and when we feel understood. So connect before you correct.
So, why don't you give us some examples?
Well, the best example ever is exactly this thing that Sarah Jane was talking about when we were brought into Aviva for their big change program. The CEO, Dame Amanda Blanc. Essentially, if you think about change happening in three spaces, the vision is created at leadership, and if you're very lucky, and it was at Aviva, it's often driven by the voice of the people, so they'll do surveys at the bottom. But then it's that group in the middle who are sort of entrusted with change, who are said, right, go on, get on with it, and then nothing is done. So there was a big consultancy firm that was brought in to do the change program. It was very, very heady, and they suddenly realized, hang on a second, we're not doing anything about these people how they go out and have the conversations that people sort of, to coin the phrase, lean in and go, oh, this sounds interesting. I want to be part of this change. I want to help co-create this change. And so that's where it came in. I mean, and it's been very, very successful at Aviva, and they're doing incredibly well. And Dame Amanda Blanc's vision has genuinely been delivered in pretty rapid time, actually, because the leadership, that middle management leadership, were really, really putting it into practice. But there's hardly a week or a day goes by even when we aren't working with clients. To give you another example, I was working with a team yesterday for a big piece of work on a big change program for a utility company in the UK, and essentially it was about getting everyone on the same page so they understood exactly what the change was possible with what were they. Did they all agree on what they were trying to do? So we've created some software, actually, and some AI that helps people create the DNA. What do we all agree what it is we're trying to achieve here, the dream? Okay, what could get in the way of it? Okay, what actions are we going to take? And so that's a strategic way of using the DNA. So there every day there are examples of this working.
Sarah Jane, have you got? I was waiting for you to say something else.
Well, okay. So you want an example of the DNA?
Yeah,
just a very, very simple example. Well, I think that for instance, if you have somebody who is not performing well, for instance, in a work situation, and there's obviously reasons for that. So going in and saying, right, okay, your scores are really down, and starting with that is probably not the best way, because immediately they feel terrible. Yeah. So to go in and say to start talking about, so I'm just interested in how you're getting on, how you're feeling at the moment, and whatever and everything, because and talking about that in a way of, oh right, I understand, yes, blah, and actually having that little conversation first, which is about that connection that you're doing, is talking about what their future thoughts are and things like that. So getting that out of, and then only then you just say, well, I think this is absolutely marvelous, but there are some difficulties here because blah, blah, and give them the understanding of what's happening. And I think, and then you can go on to whatever the solution might be, or have that conversation. But I think by connecting to the dream, and very importantly, if you can, connecting to what their future dreams are. Because if you can put somebody in future state about something that they may well want, if they're not performing well, they're not going to get there, obviously. And you might talk to them initially about something like, well, I know 6 months ago when we were having a chat and you were saying that you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And I can see that would be possible because obviously there are some opportunities. But at the moment, do you see what I mean? And so it's actually acknowledging that you understand what people's dreams are, and you can understand what's good about what they're doing. First of all,
you use it as a coaching model, don't you?
It is. I mean, it's a very useful thing in many situations in terms of coaching. And then it's only when you can talk about that in that sort of way, when you think, I understand, so that they think they understand me, basically. And then you can start to talk about the problems. Obviously, there are situations where we can reverse it, but we might come on to that later. But but I think that having that space to really think about how am I going to approach this particular conversation with this particular person. It's a really useful model to think about how do I need to lead into this? I need to be starting to talk about something that we can both agree with, and actually maybe put somebody in the future state so that they can see what's possible and agree with that. And then only then can you start to begin to speak about what's in the way of it.
So to kind of fast forward, my next question is, what are the traits of an engaging leader today?
What are the traits of an engaging leader?
Yeah.
Listening.
Yes, no, I think that's right. Actually, I mean, we're living in such times of change and such times of fast change, Tim, that there's a friend of ours called Charlotte Otter who's just written a book called We Need New Leaders, and that's based on her master's thesis that she did at Oxford Said. And one of the big things, and we mentioned this in our book actually, is about it's the leaders who create the time and space for people to actually to have those conversations, to actually so time and space, it's about literally the time, but the proximity where they can, as Sarah Jane said, listen and have those conversations, so people are co-creating the future. And we open our book with a quote by Howard Schultz when he was chairman of Starbucks, is that, unless you actually engage people in the co-creation of the strategy of a company, you will lose your best people. So it's not, change should never be a leadership top-down thing. Certainly create the vision, but then find a way to engage people in wanting to be part of that change, because otherwise, you won't keep them around.
I think listening and playing back is really important. So many times I think in situations, it's very easy to get stuck in that mode of do, because there's so much to do and there's so much to sort out. And it's hard. Sometimes I think it can be hard to find the time to just go about and just listen to people and ask people questions and just find out about what's happening and have those conversations where you're asking questions rather than doling out stuff that needs to be done. And because they're where you get the gold. you know, and to lead properly, you need to understand, and you can't understand if you don't really know what's going on, or if you haven't really listened, or you haven't really understood. So I think that that's probably one of the most you don't need to be speaking most of the time, basically.
Yeah.
The more the people that you're leading speak, the better.
Yeah. Sarah Jane and David, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The DNA of Engagement. If I wanted to buy one of these, where could I get one from?
Amazon. Although the various websites, Barnes and Noble, all of those things, you can actually order them online from all of those places. And like you said, Tim, I mean, on 10th of September, we'll see whether it's how it does in the Business Book of the Year Awards 2025 at Wembley.
Excellent. You must be really excited.
Oh, we are.
Yes, no, it's great.
Yeah, no, we get to dress up and go.
We do.
Yeah.
He gets to put a frock on.
I get.
And where can we find you?
www.thestoryspotters.com, and we'll come and visit us on LinkedIn. We sort of babble away on there, as most people do these days, but we try to put some good value on there as well.
Good. And thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book and talking about storytelling. It's a fascinating subject, both change and the way that stories impact us. And as part of all of us wanting to be better people and our constant learning, it's something that we need to constantly know about.
Connect first, then correct. Absolutely.
That's it.
Fantastic.